McLaren's weekend in Baku quickly turned into a nightmare, and I want to walk you through exactly how it unfolded, because this wasn't just a bad day at the office. It was the team's lowest points haul of the season and one of the most puzzling storylines of the race. Right from the start, things went wrong. A first-lap crash left Oscar Piastri stranded at Turn 5, unable to continue, while Lando Norris could do no better than where he started. 6 points. That's all McLaren walked away with. And if you compare that to their previous worst result of 12 points back in Canada, you start to realize how much of a setback this was. Now, the way Piastri's day ended was surreal. Instead of being rushed back to the paddock, he was directed to a marshal's chair just off the track and left sitting there with no way to communicate with his team. No medical car was deployed because the impact wasn't considered heavy enough, which meant he was effectively stranded. Think about it. An F1 driver, in full gear with no radio, watching the race on a borrowed phone handed to him by a marshal, cut off from his team, and watching the Grand Prix unfold without being part of it. That image alone raises a very simple but important question. How can something like this happen in the most high-tech sport in the world? Was it Oscar's mistake, the team's lack of preparation, or just rotten luck? I want to hear your take. Who do you think carries most of the blame here? The driver, the team, or sheer bad fortune? Vote in the poll and drop a one-word answer in the comments. If you like clear, straight-to-the-point race breakdowns, don't forget to subscribe to Fast News F1 and tap the notification bell. Your subscription is really important, and it helps us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers so we can keep bringing you inside looks like this. The crash was only the beginning. The real oddity came in what happened next, when Oscar had to make an unusual and almost unbelievable journey just to get back to the paddock. After being placed on that marshal's chair, he couldn't just walk back along the track because of the moat between the circuit fence and the spectator fence. That narrow gap makes direct access impossible in several places around the Baku layout. To leave that chair, he would have had to exit into the city streets and make his way back through public areas and an underpass, all while the Grand Prix was still running. Eventually, that's exactly what happened. Escorted through quiet streets, past landmarks, under the track, and straight toward the paddock. Picture it, a Formula One driver, helmet under his arm, walking past a Lamborghini dealership in full race kit, blending into the city like a character out of a movie. If you saw that on television, you'd think it was staged, but it was real. Even Oscar's security guard had trouble catching up because, without an official tabard, he couldn't immediately access restricted zones. He had to rely on marshals to grant entry. It was a nearly 12 to 14-minute walk for Oscar, and roughly a 30-minute round trip for his security guard. An urban detour that revealed how fragile and improvised the retrieval process can be on street circuits. Should Formula One have a dedicated system to retrieve stranded drivers from anywhere around a circuit, no questions asked? Say yes or no in the comments. As Oscar was making that odd walk back, chaos was unfolding in the paddock. McLaren's press officer and our security team were scrambling, trying to figure out how to get him back. But every call seemed to hit a dead end. They contacted the FIA, only to find that officials didn't even have a presence in that stretch of the circuit. The people running the event were effectively in the dark about how to handle that section. Instead, it was the marshals and media who actually understood the logistics, which is a glaring role reversal. The people tasked with managing the race should be the ones coordinating recovery and safety, but here those responsibilities were improvised by those closest to the scene. During all this, Oscar remained cut off from his team with no way to update them or calm worried fans watching at home. A team that lives and breathes on second-to-second telemetry was suddenly powerless, and every lost lap of communication cost McLaren more than time. It cost clarity, strategic options, and focus for Lando, who had no teammate to support or feed information into the high. Strategy. In a sport where data is king, being blind like that is simply unacceptable. So tell me, in a crisis like this, who should take the lead? The FIA, who runs the event, or the team, who know their drivers best? Leave your take in the comments because this debate will help shape how the sport evolves. While McLaren were drowning in confusion, the rest of the paddock was doing exactly the opposite, celebrating, embracing the weekend, and turning moments into memories. Carlos Sainz clinched a podium and sprinted straight to his crew, soaked in emotion and lifted by hugs and cheers. The team even pulled out a fire extinguisher as a prop, a cheeky throwback to an improvisation earlier in the season when there was no champagne, and the extinguisher became a mock celebration tool. It sounds odd, but that's the human side of racing. When things go well, teams bond, and they make playful memories out of odd situations. Up front, Red Bull and Max Verstappen celebrated in pit. Lane with family and friends, and George Russell battled through illness all weekend to deliver a solid podium, even if he looked exhausted. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. One team's jubilation versus another's scramble. And the paddock also delivered some of those offbeat moments that fans absolutely adore. Stray cats wandering into the paddock turned into viral hits, kids singing the national anthem with over-the-top enthusiasm, and drivers and staff creating spontaneous moments that remind you this is still human theater, not just engineering on wheels. That human texture is exactly what makes a race weekend compelling. While one team deals with a collapse, another is building momentum and morale that can carry them forward. Which paddock moment do you replay? The big champagne spray on the podium, or the quirky behind-the-scenes stories that go viral? Vote in the poll and tell me which one you'd rewatch. Now, the obvious question is, what must McLaren fix, and fast, to avoid repeating this nightmare? There are immediate, practical steps that make sense and are achievable before the next street circuit. First, establish clear retrieval protocols for any point around a track. A simple triage and escort plan that teams and the FIA agree on ahead of time for circuits with public access complications. That includes issuing temporary tabards or credentials to a driver's security or a designated team liaison so they can access the moat and evacuate a driver safely without needing ad hoc permission. Second, improve communication redundancy. If a driver is stranded outside radio range or without a functioning vehicle, there must be a guaranteed method to relay his condition and location to the team in real time. Whether that's a dedicated Marshall radio channel, a short-range team-to-Marshall gateway, or a handheld device protocol. Third, review the role and responsibilities of officials in peripheral sections of the track. If the FIA isn't covering those zones, the plan should make it explicit who is and how teams are to coordinate. Fourth, from a PR perspective, have a ready-made narrative and response plan so that fans and stakeholders get accurate updates and the team can control misinformation and speculation while the situation is resolved. Which of these fixes do you want to see McLaren implement first? Protocols, comms, security access, or PR? Pick one in the comments. Implementation of these steps would not only protect driver welfare but also safeguard a team's competitive integrity during a race. At the same time, taking care of the human element, ensuring drivers aren't left feeling abandoned while thousands watch, goes a long way to restoring confidence both inside the team and among fans. If this kind of behind-the-scenes, no-fluff analysis is your thing, please subscribe to Fast News F1 and turn on the bell. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps keep these stories coming. Finally, I want to leave you with a simple takeaway. F1 is a sport of razor-thin margins, and while the headlines often celebrate wins and records, the gaps in the system reveal themselves in moments like this. A stranded driver, A lost communications link and a team scrambling for answers can turn a promising weekend into a costly one. But the same weekend also shows the resilience and character of other teams that turn challenges into celebrations. We'll be watching to see how McLaren responds and whether the sport introduces any formal